So our next session is on government initiatives to support hydrogen startups. Like the last session, we will have the speakers present first and host a Q&A panel after the third speaker. We'll also be selecting panel questions from the chat, so don't be shy and pop them in so that panelists can also answer them after the session via the chat. Ooh. So with no further delay, I would like to introduce Rowena Ryan, Regional Manager of Oz Industry, to present on Oz Industry programs related to hydrogen startups. Rowena is the Regional Manager, Southern Queensland and Northern Coastal New South Wales for Oz Industry as part of the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. Having headed the Gold Coast-based regional office for the past 15 years, Rowena has been heavily involved in Southern Queensland and Northern New South Wales business communities and has assisted numerous businesses through Oz Industry's diverse suite of business assistance programs. Rowena brings to the role many years of business development, account management, and trade facilitation across a wide range of industries and disciplines in both Australia and internationally. With postgraduate and undergraduate tertiary qualifications in accountancy, business law, and taxation, Rowena has previously worked with the Queensland Chamber of Commerce and Industry, QCCI Commerce Queensland in Brisbane, the Maltese Australian Chamber of Commerce abroad, and within the property development and telecommunications industries in Australia. Rowena's charter at Oz Industry is to ensure the entrepreneurial spirit of innovative companies is given in an environment in which it has the greatest potential to soar, and she plays an integral part in facilitating such growth in the region. So without further ado, please welcome Rowena Ryan. Over to you, Rowena.
Thank you, Diane, for that very kind introduction. I do believe, although I thought it was sorted, that the video was functioning, but it appears not to be right now. So apologies that you can't see me, but hopefully you can all hear me okay. If so, without further ado, as obviously you've outlined in the title of this plenary session suggests, this government incentive session is aiming to demonstrate that government at any level strives for business growth to underpin a thriving and healthy economy. And I think this has never been more evident than from the Australian government's 2020-21 budget measures handed down on Tuesday, which will be implemented as part of the government's COVID-19 economic recovery plan. You'd all agree that irrefutably the COVID-19 pandemic has changed the global and domestic context in which we're operating. And so as Australia rebuilds, the Australian government's commitment is to reopen and strengthen the economy, obviously create jobs and pave a clear road ahead for the nation. So myself as the Regional Manager for Oz Industry, which is part of the Australian Government Department of Industry, Energy, Science and Resources, our agenda is to secure future growth by being focused on leveraging and building on Australia's strengths by investing in high value add manufacturing, particularly relevant to the hydrogen sector, investing in clean technology and emissions reduction, locking in lower energy costs, building our resources industries, and of course also accelerating digital uptake by Australian businesses such as yourselves as startups, making the most of our national science, technology, engineering and math capabilities as well. So as this session will aim to demonstrate, we'll continue to collaborate across all levels of government and work in partnership with the private sector as well to support economic recovery and secure future growth. Next slide, thanks Priya. So Oz Industry, being the program delivery division of the Australian Government Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources, as mentioned previously, our charter specifically is to help businesses to start, innovate, grow and prosper. We back new and existing businesses, including startups and entrepreneurs such as yourselves, by providing support to innovate, to commercialise new products and services, and to take your ideas to the world. Our programs can also help improve business capability and competitiveness to accelerate your growth. We do this through our extensive national network of 32 state and regional offices across Australia, which includes an on-the-ground footprint of regional managers such as myself, business development managers in metropolitan areas, and a range of expert program facilitators, all of whom provide face-to-face support to connect you with information, services, and support from across the government. Of course, we also have a team of dedicated customer service representatives in our National Contact Centre available through 13 28 46 who can help your business 7 days a week by phone. And that's in addition, of course, to the web chat facility on our business.gov.au website. And our website provides an invaluable amount of information and resources online as well. Next slide, thanks, Priya. Now, as I'm sure you'd all agree, adaptability, ingenuity, constant innovation is obviously key to driving productivity, job creation, and wealth, and therefore the survival of any business in a competitive market, but particularly so for yourselves who are operating in an emerging and developing market. As recently announced through its technology investment roadmap and Australia's first low emissions technology statement, the government is pushing ahead with its commitment to invest in low emissions technologies that strengthen our economy, support jobs and businesses, and help reduce global emissions. Clean hydrogen is one of 5 priority areas in which support to develop new and emerging technologies is focused. In which case, for you, the rationale to innovate is clear. Businesses that innovate are 60% more likely to increase their profits and, of course, in turn, twice as likely to increase their productivity and employment. So innovation, as you'd all understand, is a journey from your initial idea through your validation and demonstration of minimum viable product to launching and scaling up. So as this visual or infographic aims to demonstrate, there are a number of government initiatives and incentives at both federal and state government level to support you on your journey. As you can see on the top line represents some Queensland government programs, which I know Daniel of PricewaterhouseCoopers will make reference to later. And on the bottom line are some of the Australian government initiatives that between Leigh of Austrade and myself will cover off on in today's session. Supporting starts obviously through that R&D phase at the start of the graphic there, through to commercialisation grants, as well as support for collaborative research projects, and finally support to reach your export markets. So let's just look at a snapshot of some of those business support programs. Our business.gov.au website has information to support businesses on a range of business topics through planning, finance, marketing, people, product services, risk management, including business templates and guides. So these are invaluable online resources, especially for yourselves as startup businesses to access. Importantly, it also provides a search function to help you navigate and look for the grants and assistance, some of which we're talking about today, and that can be across all levels of government, in addition to also helping you find local business experts and advisors, as well as events, training and opportunities. So I strongly recommend use of our business.gov.au search finder. Now, for those of you as part of our audience who are startups, and if you're literally even an intender looking to start up your business, we have a starting a business guide, which has a step-by-step tool that works you through all the process of starting a business, through understanding your key business and tax registrations, helping you prepare your finances, understanding what laws you need to navigate, and protecting your business and setting up your operations. Within that tool itself, you also have access to the business registration service, which is where you'll register for your ABN, your business name, GST, and PAYG. And it also hosts the Australian Business Licence and Information Service, which is what helps you to find what government licenses, permits, or approvals, if relevant, are relevant to your industry and location. And it provides you with a very simple personalised report relevant to your business. Next slide, thanks Priya. So that's a snapshot of some of our online resources. Obviously, in talking about the need and importance of adopting digital technologies and having a digital presence for your business, some of the support that we provide yourselves as startups and small businesses in building your digital capability includes our Australian Small Business Advisory Service Digital Solutions Program. So we have funded state-based organisations across Australia to deliver you one-to-one support, as well as interactive webinars and workshops. they're not free, but they are a low-cost, independent digital advisory service for small business, and it will assist you in areas such as creating your website and selling online, your social media and digital marketing strategies, adopting small business software, and also looking at your online security and data privacy, which of course is very important. We've also provided support to organisations like Digital Coaching International, who in turn are developing a website to drive digital capability amongst small businesses and provide additional digital advice, training and online support forums. Next slide, thanks Priya. So as previously mentioned, for businesses like yourselves, the rationale to innovate is clear. The R&D tax incentive is for companies at the research and development end of creating a new product, process or service, one of the most invaluable initiatives of the Australian government, because it helps you to offset the costs associated with your R&D activity. So again, for businesses who may even be in a tax loss position, this could provide you with a refund from the ATO. And this in turn, of course, by helping you to invest in R&D that perhaps you might not normally undertake as a startup or as a small business, this will assist you in investing in your R&D, which will in turn help you become more innovative and globally competitive. Now, the great thing about this program is it is broad-based and market-driven assistance available to businesses of all sizes and across all industries, and it will provide you with generous benefits for your eligible R&D activities through a targeted tax offset. Specifically, as startups where your turnover is less than $20 million as an aggregated turnover, the assistance available is a 43.5% refundable tax offset, and for all other eligible entities, a non-refundable 38.5% tax offset, which any unused amounts could be carried forward for future years. Now, there is a clear distinction in the assistance that government offers between entitlement programs or grants, and some grants are entitlement versus competitive. This program is an entitlement program, and it is jointly delivered by both Oz Industry, we look after your R&D activities, and the Australian Tax Office, who is concerned with your R&D expenditure. So to be eligible for this program, you must be an incorporated entity conducting eligible R&D activities, which for us represent technical experimental activities for which your outcome couldn't be known or determined in advance, without then adopting or applying a systematic progression of work based on scientific principles. And the purpose of which, of course, in conducting those R&D activities is specifically to generate new knowledge. So where you have a minimum of at least $20,000 in eligible R&D expenditure, or notional deductions as the program refers to, or you engage a registered research service provider to undertake that R&D on your behalf, then you are eligible to access assistance under this program. Now, if all of that sounds quite...
Oh, sorry, Rowena. Just in the interest of time, I just wanted to check in with you if there's much more to go.
Okay, almost done. As I said, next slide, Priya. There are eligibility assessment tools on the website and a plethora of sector-specific and other guidance that can assist you, in addition to staff like myself on the ground that can help you. Next slide, Priya. Again, if you're looking to collaborate, because we know a lot of innovation comes from collaboration, there is assistance through CSIRO under its Kickstart program to assist you to specifically collaborate with CSIRO to the tune of funding of $10,000 to $50,000. If you're looking to collaborate on a project with CSIRO, again, if it's of benefit to access a PhD student or another academic intern to assist you, there's assistance through the APR intern program as well. So the details there on the slide. Next slide, Priya. Thank you. Our Entrepreneurs program, it's quite an extensive umbrella program that has support both to develop your innovative solutions, commercialise your project and grow your business. And for those of you in the audience who are incubators as part of the startup ecosystem, there is also support specifically under our Incubator Support Initiative. Next slide, Priya. The Incubator Support Initiative provides both assistance to new and existing incubators by way of a grant, as well as assistance to engage an expert in residence to mentor your incubatees. And also a rounds program, which has literally just opened currently with the Women in STEM and Entrepreneurship, also has a similar aim of assisting break down those barriers for women entrepreneurs. Next slide, thanks Priya. And where, of course, you're looking to commercialise your novel product or service, the accelerating commercialisation element of the Entrepreneurs Program specifically provides both expert guidance, connections and grant funding to the tune of up to $1 million on a matched funding basis to assist you in commercialising your novel idea. And for those in the audience who are investors who might in turn be looking to co-invest in either accelerating commercialisation customers or other hydrogen startup businesses, that through the Australian Tax Office, there's also access to a tax incentive for early stage investors. Next slide, thanks Priya. Now, Innovation Connections is only available when you're a more established business of at least 3 years trading and 1.5 million turnover. So I won't go through that in detail today. But again, if you're looking to collaborate on a research project, the Cooperative Research Centre Projects Grant, which is round-based, could be of benefit to you in the future. Next slide, thanks Priya. Again, in the future, other growth-focused elements of the Entrepreneurs Program will become relevant, but I won't talk to them today. Next slide, thanks Priya. And as so expertly being co-chaired today's event by Paul Hodgson of NERA, and I know CEO Miranda Taylor is also facilitating part of today's sessions. NERA represents one of the many industry growth centres that our department funds. NERA specifically obviously supports at an industry level the oil, gas, energy and resources sector through various initiatives such as project funding, hydrogen industry cluster funding, which I think Paul has already spoken about. So that's me in a nutshell. Last slide, thanks Priya. And so in terms of means of following up on any of this support, obviously you'll have access to these slides, our business.gov.au website or our hotline centre. Subscribe for our newsletter, I'd thoroughly recommend, and accessing your local regional manager such as myself, which you can find through the search finder and our website, will be invaluable. And I now hand over to Leigh of Austrade. Thanks, Diane.
Thanks so much for that wealth of information there, Rowena. And it's great to see that there is just so much business support available, even the non-financial ones, which is still quite invaluable, especially to those startups who have great tech but need advice and support on building the venture around it. So just to kick off, our next speaker is Leigh Kennedy, Manager of Investment, Energy and Resources of Austrade, and he will present on Austrade International Opportunities. Leigh Kennedy is responsible for the Austrade's focus on winning foreign direct investment into Australia's resources and energy industry. With Austrade's global network reaching over 80 locations, his team undertakes promotion, attraction and facilitation for potential investors, ranging from large global conglomerates to startup technology companies. Hydrogen is one of Austrade's investment priorities. Previously, Leigh was working with Australian energy and automotive companies, assisting them to enter global value chains. He also has significant experience in energy security policy when based in Canberra. So with that, I will hand over to you, Leigh. Welcome, Leigh.
Thank you, Diane. And first I should, sorry, is that okay? So firstly, I guess I'll apologise for the photo and the difference between what I look like today versus what the photo. Got to love COVID and having no hairdressers open in Melbourne. So moving right along, I guess I've got 4 things. Priya, if you wouldn't mind sharing the screen, sorry. So I've got 4 things that Austrade's really keen to have a conversation with about you today, and that's around our global network, the Trade Start network, landing pads, and EMDG, Export Market Development Grant. So I might just...
Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute.
No troubles. So so briefly about Austrade while the slides are coming up. We're in over 80 locations around the world, and many of those locations are hydrogen specific. So Austrade has a focus in hydrogen. Japan, Korea, obviously where the two big offtake markets are right now, or are developing right now. Singapore, Germany, France, UK, the Middle East, and we're seeing interest out of the Americas in either coming to Australia to build projects or looking at Australia as a place to deploy technology and capital, noting, I guess, Australia is well placed to capture some of the opportunities in North Asia. One of the other elements that Austrade has right now, which we've really honed in on during COVID, is our digital products. Austrade has spent a lot of time over the last several months around upgrading our information that is online, that is available to anyone at any time. So definitely understand startups, pressed for time, aren't maybe not looking to engage during regular business hours, but want to load up after hours and understand when information is available to them. So plenty of great information online as required for you, and that's around webinars, actually speaking to people, or free trade seminars as well. I'm really sorry the slides haven't come up yet, but we'll keep moving, conscious of time. One program that Austrade has is our Trade Start network. So that is essentially, we've got, instead of just being based out of the capital cities, I'm in Melbourne, we've got co-funded positions around Australia, that are in the region. So Cairns, Darwin, Rockhampton, Bundaberg. So a lot of where some hydrogen hubs are looking to be developed. We've got staff in those regions that can assist you with developing up your export plans and taking you through that journey. Going back to Rowena's slide around where that journey is and where does Austrade play. It's right at that pointy end. Once you've done your market testing, your product development, essentially, I guess it's Austrade's role to find your customers internationally rather than domestically.
Are you right with the slides at the moment, Venkata, Leigh?
Yeah, we've skipped through, so we'll get back to. We'll keep. I guess I'm conscious of time here, so we might skip straight to landing pads, please.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And landing pads is really the Australian government program built for startups and scale-ups to assist you going global. And so Austrade has 5 landing pad locations around the world, and it's no surprise where they are. They're really the hubs around the world, and each one of them has their own value proposition of why you target those markets. A lot of information on our online, but essentially, if we go to the next slide, please. We have dedicated landing pad manager in each of those locations, and the services that we deliver as part of the landing pad program is around a 90-day immersion program. So you actually go into our landing pad for 90 days and you get access to a dedicated staff member there that can really assist you network and gain access to a whole range of different stakeholders, whether it be investors, big R&D facilities. So Tel Aviv, our guys in Tel Aviv have access to all the major R&D centres for a lot of the global corporates that have operations in Tel Aviv. So access to mentors, alumni, and a whole range of others that can help you build your product, build your service, as well as doing, I guess, Austrade bread and butter work around assisting you with business development opportunities. Can we jump through to the next slide, please, Priya? One of the other elements is this sector-focused boot camps, and these are where we can get, and I've flagged this a couple of times over last week. How do we build a hydrogen-focused boot camp? and essentially, obviously, when travel's allowed, take a hydrogen-focused startup cohort to any of those markets and look to see how you can learn, how you can grow, and how you can test some of your products. So essentially, you build a much like what is done in Australia, but essentially it's Austrade's role to take you abroad. And of course, there's our general services on what we offer, business development opportunities and how to enter global value chains. And one element which we've started to build on is hot desk passes. So working with companies around the world to give access to landing pad applicants around gaining access to some of those hotspots where it's a lot easier to work rather than being in, say, a landing pad program. And I do have a lot of slides here, and it's really my intention to leave these for you when you do have time to go through the slide deck, but we'll head straight along, please, Priya, to the next one. So a lot of people ask Austrade, I can't travel. So what do we do? We have tweaked our service offering to facilitate these connections, but just like what we're doing today, it's digitally rather than in person. So a lot of our customers around the world are doing the same thing. So it's normal, and it's become the new norm to be doing these things virtually. And so running a lot of webinar sessions, running a lot of virtual sessions like this with, I guess, sector experts in market with the Australian cohort at this end. And then I guess we roll through to, again, digital resources, how we then use this to repurpose and share more broadly, so other Australian companies, startups, can learn from this as well. And moving right along, I just want to highlight one example that's been through our landing pad program, energy related, obviously, Power Ledger. They've been through San Fran, got a wealth of knowledge, got some fantastic connections, and have since gone on to bigger and better things. And just quickly, next one through, the last one I want to talk to you today is our Export Market Development Grant, EMDG. From what I've led to believe, it's one of the oldest Australian government funding programs around, and it really assists companies gain a reimbursement of up to 50% of some of their export promotional costs above $15,000. And it's there every year. You can have multiple goes at this program. So there's 7 years that you can get access to, and it's fantastic for SMEs or scale-ups and startups who want to access or who want to go global. And it really does. So it's not a grant. It's really explicit. It's a reimbursement. So you've got to actually spend the money, apply back, and then it comes back to you. So lots of information online. And I'm conscious of time, so we'll just leave it at that one. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Leigh, and for clawing back some time. Those landing pads and boot camps sound fantastic for people who want to crack the overseas market. And the immersion part is really important, I reckon, because of all the cultural nuances that you will need to be aware of for startups who want to deal with the overseas market. So thank you. Rolling on to our next speaker is Daniel Knox, Director of R&D Government Incentives from PricewaterhouseCoopers, Align and Connect. Daniel is a director in the Brisbane office and one of our startup specialists with a focus on helping his clients fund their innovation and expansion. He has over 13 years of R&D, tax and grants experience with PwC, and more recently took on the role of leading the PwC Align business in Brisbane, which seeks to assist technology companies scaling to the corporate, enterprise and government. Prior to PwC, Daniel worked for the Queensland Government on industry development initiatives focused on priority sectors. I met Daniel through a really good colleague of mine, and I've been very grateful that he has given me some tips and tricks and wealth of knowledge for my own startup. Just been incredibly helpful. So with that, I welcome Daniel Knox. Over to you, Daniel.
Hi, Diane, and hi to everyone out there in virtual world, and thanks for having me today. how I thought I'd set up my presentation is, given Rowena and Leigh representing the government have done a good job of outlining some of the programs that are available. What we thought I might focus on mine is really around just giving you some tips and tricks and put some questions back around for you to potentially consider, and as well as give a bit of an end user perspective on how the programs work, and as I said, just some things you should think about as you approach these. So one of the first places I thought I'd start with is really understanding, and this is particularly where you are new to interacting with the government, is just to give you a quick idea around when we talk about grants and incentives, what are they, and particularly how are they different, because it can be easy to get them both confused. So here's just a quick perspective on grants on the left and tax incentive on the right. So typically grants are one-off programs funded by a specific bucket of money that the government's put aside. Whereas when you look at the R&D tax incentive, the beauty of that program is it's an annual process that you can claim each and every year in line with your financial year, providing you think you still meet the eligibility criteria. Typically grants are prospective, so that's always one to watch out for. So I've had a lot of clients with great projects that fit a funding profile, but unfortunately they've actually already kicked off the project, which rules them out from looking at a grant. That's as opposed to the tax incentive, which is actually a reimbursement of expenses you've already undertaken, and hence that's done retrospectively. So again, an advantage in the R&D program is typically you are looking backwards and can go back to your previous financial year. Grants, again, because of their nature, they tend to be discretionary and competitive. So again, whilst you might be eligible for a grant program and meet the criteria, it's always actually important to sit there and think, is my grant application going to be competitive? And, you know, who else is likely to go in to this program? Typically, they're always oversubscribed. And, you know, so there are some grant programs out there where the success, likelihood of success is below 10%. So again, just something to think about. Everyone gets excited at the prospects of grants. You know, they consider it free money, which I can certainly attest that it's not. But just something to be aware of you know, where you're putting your time into that and your chances of success. Again, on the tax side then, the tax program is a self-assessment like the rest of the tax system, like your company and personal tax returns, and it's more entitlement based. So, you know, all people who apply to the program are potentially able to be funded, providing you meet the criteria. Again, grants are targeted and specific. So, you know, grant programs follow politics and policy, I always say. And so, you know, always targeted at, be it a particular industry, a particular sector, size of company, whatever it might be. On the tax incentive front, again, there's some key criteria, but all industries are open to apply, all sizes, small and large. When you undertake grant applications, the government is looking to pick winners. So not only will it look at your project, but it'll also do an assessment of your company. So they will look at things like your track record, your financials, your founders, your advisory board, all of those kind of things in making an assessment. Again, on the tax program, it's actually where you meet the criteria. It's actually based on the specific activities you've undertaken within a project and the specific expenditure you've incurred. On grants, as I said, a lot of our focus, particularly for startups, is around R&D and commercialization. So grants, albeit there's some particular ones that we'll run through focused on R&D and commercialization. There's also a lot of different other funds out there, and Leigh and Rowena have given an outline of some of those. But again, those might be a focus, whereas the tax incentive is very focused on research and development, albeit that in itself is open to interpretation as to where your activities sit on that R&D continuum. So before I move off R&D tax, and given Rowena highlighted some of the the nuts and bolts of how the program works, I thought I'd just give you some considerations and tips being an end user. And typically what I spend a lot of time talking to new clients and new claimants who are looking to enter the program. So the first thing I'd mention is just have a think about if you understand what tax R&D is versus R&D more broadly defined. So the program is specific, it's ensconced in tax law and therefore has a very specific definition. So you need to understand, does your project fit within that definition, as opposed to you yourself thinking it's R&D, or, you know, a lot of people use innovation as a substitute. And again, you know, I think there's something like 180 participants on this call today. If we took a poll on everyone around what they thought was R&D and what is innovative, you know, potentially we're going to get 180 different answers. So just need to understand that tax R&D is specifically defined, and you need to understand whether you fit within that. When you're looking at the program, it's important to consider your interaction with your other tax affairs. So it is a tax program, as I've mentioned. So you need to think about things like your tax structure. There's issues around the ownership of your business. These will all impact your ability to claim, what part of the program you can claim in, the benefit you get, and the like. So always important to be aware of the bigger tax picture. Again, the focus in the project is understanding that this is all focused, the eligibility around technical risk. So I get a lot of, have a lot of conversations with clients and potential clients where, you know, they articulate something has been a failure or the objectives they're trying to achieve. And really when you dig into them, it's all about a commercial risk and a commercial outcome. So really important when you're looking at this program and the criteria and understanding where you fit is trying to understand, and probably the simplest way I can put it is understanding where the issue is about, can you build it rather than can you sell it? And that's the approach you should say. And that might define of who's best placed in your business to help you make the claim, because typically we talk to a lot of commercial CFOs, business founders who ultimately have a perspective around a commercial perspective as opposed to the technical perspective. I wanted to make a quick comment on one of the key criteria, and probably where we spend most of our time is, and it really relates to the first point I made, is the outcome unknown in advance, and what does that mean? So again, this is a quasi, you know, innovation test within the program. And it's important that you really dig into that at an activities level. And I think my next point I've got there really illustrates this well around understanding, you know, where you're doing technology development versus technology deployment and demonstration, because that is a grey area in the program. And it's very fact specific on each individual case. But for instance, you know, you would generally assume technology development is likely to be eligible for the program. But I have seen plenty of claimants who are doing technology development who actually probably who fail the criteria on the basis that whilst yes, they are developing something, it's not a large enough leap from the existing state of the art in the field, and potentially they're at risk of failing. Similarly, on technology and deployment, typically it's less likely if you're taking someone else's technology to be applicable. But again, fact specific, it might be you are making a major tweak to that technology or applying it in a different manner, which is enough to open up the eligibility criteria. As you enter the program, have a think about, are you ready for reviews and audits? So again, like anything else in the tax world, you are making claims to the government about your eligibility, and you do need to be able to substantiate your claims through documentation, and just be aware that you are actually taking on a risk. So you might be comfortable with that risk, but ultimately the government has the ability to come in, undertake a review, and where it's in disagreement with you about eligibility, seek to claw back those fundings, which particularly for startups can be a challenge when you've received a refund and already spent that. So that obviously then puts the business in a very difficult position. There's some stuff around understanding, and this gets into the nuts and bolts of the program.
Sorry, Daniel. I just wanted to double check how long you've got to go, just in the interest of time.
Yeah, I'll race through it. Understanding who's the proper claimant. So again, some of the nuts and bolts of, particularly in this sector, understanding Have you sourced technology from someone? Are you implementing it? Are you working with an industry partner? You know, who's ultimately going to be able to claim? And again, last point there is there is a debt financing market to understand that that sits on the back of the program, where there are boutique financiers out there who will actually extend debt funding to you. I wasn't going to talk much to this because the guys have covered a lot of this, but I just wanted to put that screen up there to show there is a bunch of different programs out there. They're all different. It's good to understand the themes that the government funds. So that's why I've presented it in this way, because there's some hydrogen specific type stuff, but it might be that you'll have a program, you know, it might be based on your end market. So, you know, there's manufacturing's kind of back in black these days, post-COVID. So it might be that there's actually some funds available under a manufacturing. There's obviously some funds around commercialization, research and translation, which is where you're involved in a university or a research partner. But again, it is a confusing space. So if you look at it and you get confused, you are not alone. That's because there's a bunch of different programs out there, and they're also changing. And, you know, we've just had a federal budget, which again will change a bunch of things. We're here in Queensland, where I'm based, due to go to election, so that'll change up things as well. Just a couple of quick things to think about on grants is make sure you're business and customer focused. So it's easy to get distracted by the prospect, as I said, of free money, but that can be, you know, that can distract you from your core business. And because a lot of that feeds into my next point of grants, and I know Diane's had some experience, which she might want to comment on, of they can take up a lot of time. So, you know, there was one program there that was talking about, you know, it involved 200 hours worth of time spent in making the application. So it's always important to think about what else could you do with 200 hours of your time, or how much of your product could you sell, you know, if you had an additional 200 hours up your sleeve. Think about grants as an interesting tightrope in needing to demonstrate success. So the government wants to back a winner. However, you also need to walk the tightrope of, if you look too successful, then you run the risk that the government, you know, your product's already commercialized, or the government thinks you can fund this yourself, and therefore they're not going to extend funding to you. So that's an interesting part of the strategy. The rest of these, you know, are pretty straightforward, and it's just for understanding the program you're going for, and really making sure you're a good fit. Think of the government like any other investor. You want to get a good pitch to them. That was all, Diane, back to you.
Thank you very much for that. I think the key message there is, you know, think of the government, that you are pitching to the government, because they really are investing in you, and just amazing, like the level of granularity that you have to go into to see whether you're eligible or not. So it pays to have to seek advice on these sorts of things. Now, we only just have time for one question, and I'll pull this one from the audience for the panel. Jeffrey L is asking, so regards to the CRCP, are these realistic for startups, given that round 9 or whatever round grants were primarily at the upper end of the grant limit and involve matched funding? And I would have to throw Arena in there as well, because I mean, these two grants are, I guess, like well, not easy, but present an opportunity for getting the funding that some technology startups need, but they do need co-funding. So how realistic is that? Rowena, would you like to start, please?
Sure, thanks, Diane, and thanks, Jeffrey, for the question. Look, I mean, with the Corridor Research Centre project grant, yes, it's about collaboration with a research organisation, which typically you may be doing as a startup, but the eligibility criteria for this program actually requires it to be an industry-led research collaboration with at least 2 Australian industry organisations, one of which must be at least an SME. So yes, there's still scope, I suppose, for a startup to be collaborating with a more established SME who potentially could be providing more of the matched funding investment, perhaps yourself as the startup more of that, you know, novel technology development, and in turn as 2 SMEs be collaborating collaborating with university. So you're right, look, it is a rounds-based program, and every year when the round comes out, it often will have a theme of focus. So again, as Daniel has suggested, you know, don't just pursue grants for the sake of, hey, there seems to be some money available. It really needs to make sense for your business. Yes, it is a significant time investment as well as some skin in the game financially, where you'd, in this case with the CRCP grant, need to at least have another established SME on board who could contribute to that project as well. So it's not completely out of the option, but again, something for startups to consider whether or not you have an eligible collaborative partner in that regard. Does that help answer your question, Jeffrey, I hope?
Thanks, Rowena. Daniel, would you have anything to add here?
Look, I'd agree with all that, but I would make the statement that yes, it is a viable option, but it will come down to, you know, do you fit the theme? Have you got a good piece of technology? Have you got great partners? Have you got great industry partners and research partners? But it is ultimately a competitive program, so it's all around understanding that and versus how you stack up with everyone else who is applying. And CRCP, I would add though, is a very competitive program.
Yep, I hear 10% of success of getting funded. Yeah. No, thanks for that. Leigh, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. It might not be your arena.
Spot on. Not really my arena. I'm happy to leave it to Rowena and Dean.
No worries. I do have one for you though, Leigh. The landing pads sound fantastic.
My apologies.
No worries. So just regard to the landing pads, is it available for all to access, or is it competitive?
Yeah, so the landing pad program is a competitive process. There used to be rounds, but now it's just open. So head across to the website and have a look, or if there are certain questions, I'm happy to facilitate them offline. But essentially, you do have to apply. And yeah, it has been very popular. Some are more popular than others. You can imagine San Fran is full always, or was always full when you could travel, whereas Tel Aviv wasn't always as busy. So it depends on really what you're after, what your objectives are of joining the landing pads, of where you actually attend. We've had people come say they need to be in San Francisco, and it turns out they actually need to be in Berlin or Tel Aviv for what they're actually looking to get out of the program. So coming in with an open mind and understanding, you know, what the program can do for them was really, really critical in getting the value out of the landing pad. Thanks
for that, Leigh. And I guess, yeah, you can have more information available if you need, if the audience needs. Just another one too for you, Leigh. Australia is a partner of Europe H2020 funded projects. This is from Julio in the audience. How does Australia fund EU project participation, and is it with government funds?
Yeah, great question. I'm not 100% sure of that program. It's I'm not aware, but essentially the Australian government can assist international companies come into Australia. It's sort of what I do on a day-to-day basis around connections, not necessarily funds, but if international companies want to come into Australia, they're able to access ARENA, CFC, and other Australian government funding if they meet the criteria. Where the EU, Germany, France, a lot of these other European countries are bringing forward hydrogen funding opportunities in third markets or looking for international partners, they're growing by the day, and we're trying to assess how Australian companies can get access to some of that cash and where they can do projects. So I'll take that one on board and look into it.
Wonderful, Leigh. So I guess I don't have any further questions here, but Oh, look, there's a wealth of knowledge here around business support and grants available, both at state, federal levels, maybe even like local levels as well. I encourage everybody in the audience to reach out to Leigh, Daniel, and Rowena if they have further questions. And of course, they can provide information on the website. And Priya, I believe the slides will also be available after the event, and this is also recorded. So if anyone needs to refer to the information that's being presented, then they've got access to that. Am I right there, Priya?
Yes, Diane.
Okay, wonderful, Venkata.
We need to get the consent from the speaker, then only we can share the presentations or the videos of the presentation videos.
Excellent, wonderful. Thanks for that. That now brings us to our second break. So would like to thank Daniel, Rowena, and Leigh for the wonderful panel discussion. And giving us an insight and the good level of government support available no matter what stage your startup is in. So now I invite you to stretch your legs, have a cup of coffee, have some lunch, and we will be back with exciting content on the elements of startup success. Thank you all and have a good break.